Hello and welcome to my debut this season for the Survivor Pool podcast. Here on the lines, it is Matt Brown, it is Steven Andrus, and we're going to come to you each and every week, give you our thoughts, our plays, as long as we're in these things anyway, and then we'll continue on even if we do die along the way to give you our thoughts on maybe the proper strategy as we try to navigate to the very end of Survivor, because you know how it works. You got to get to the end to win the big money, and that's what we're going to try to do here on this very program. Steven, we have a nice little sponsor for this podcast now, Pool Genius, partnered with them over there. If you guys have not used Pool Genius, I actually have for the last couple of years. You can go in and you can basically put in every single spec from the pool that you are in. You'll put in the number of players, you'll put in the rules, you'll put in all the stuff like that, and then it will put together a customized path for you, and they'll give you alternate ways to go about it as well, but it helps you map out the season and really does help you understand why you may make this play and why making this play maybe isn't the best for you because of what you might be able to do down the line. It's really great visually for you to take a look at the entire NFL season, and then also you can also go in and map out your own little way to go about that and save it on the site, and you will then have your optimal way that you want to go about doing all that. Steven, tons of different tools out there over there on Pool Genius, and I could not recommend them enough.
It's a fantastic tool. You're right. I've started playing around with the path to victory tool in there. You can do either max expected value if you're in a huge pool and you don't want to wind up splitting your money with people at the end, or if you're in a smaller pool and you just care about surviving to the end, you think everybody else is going to get knocked out, you can do the max survival option on there as well. And, you go to the data grid for NFL Survivor, and it's telling you each week who the most popular teams are. As you know, one of our big staples on this show is just not picking the most popular team every week. So great tool there. Link in the description if you want to go get a subscription over at Pool Genius. It's also in Mo Noira's weekly Win Probabilities tool on thelines.com for NFL Survivor each and every week. So glad to have them aboard as a partner on the show. And it is a fantastic tool. That's for sure.
Speaking of Mo's article, we'll go ahead and drop a link to Mo's article in the description of this as well so that you can go find his, but it's a very, very great overview of everything that's going on kind of in the industry with everything. Now, we know this past week, the two big dogs did advance. It was the Ravens and it was the Commanders. And if you're talking about the Circa pool, which is the, $9.2 million is going to go to the winner of that pool, over there at Circa, that was 70% of the entries on those two teams. And there were a lot of people, this guy included, who were sweating out the Commanders for sure, but they do get through as well, Steven. We did see one big knockoff there, and that was the Vikings. Vikings had over 1,000 people actually in the Circa contest, so they got booted, and the Seahawks actually ended up having, despite the fact the Seahawks, in theory, now we'll talk about how we feel about them after week one, but in theory had a bunch of future value, but there were still 600 people that were on them. And so a decent amount of people go down with both of those two teams.
In the Circa overall, it was about 20% of the pool that was already eliminated in week one. Not quite the carnage that we saw in week one a year ago, but still pretty significant. And that percentage matched pretty much what we saw in the national ESPN eliminator contest as well. So all across the board, we're looking at around 20% gone. So if you are still alive, you are the 80%.
So let's take a look at some options for this week. And guys, these would be options that are, currently as we sit right now, got a big spread, right? These are the guys that are supposed to win, and not only supposed to win by a lot. And you can actually start with Thursday night, and that would be the Eagles and the Vikings. Eagles are currently touchdown favorites on that one. Should be mentioned that this has come down, though. There has been some Vikings backing. This number was 7.5, had touched 8 for just a very brief second, now back all the way back down to a flat touchdown. So that is at least something to consider. The Lions are 5.5, 6-point favorites over the Seahawks. The Bills are 9-point favorites over the Raiders this week. The San Francisco 49ers are 8.5-point favorites over the Rams. The Giants, the same Giants that got shut out 40-0. If it tells you anything about the Arizona Cardinals, they are 5 to 6. There's a 6 out there. Point favorites over the Arizona Cardinals. On the road, the Giants are 5.5 to 6-point favorites over the Arizona Cardinals. Cowboys, massive favorites now, 9.5 over the Jets. Of course, the Jets, it is official. Not going to be without Aaron Rodgers for the rest of this season. So, Stephen, when we look at it, there are a lot of different options this week. If we're talking about, that 6 point or more point spread, there are a lot of different options that you could consider this week.
Absolutely. And originally the Cowboys were not one of those original teams in the top tier, but now it appears they will be. So Bills, Eagles, 49ers, Cowboys. And I think the question really becomes this week, who do you want to save more for the rest of the season? Who has the best future value for the rest of the season? Because if we get into this next tier, Matt, it's a little dicier for sure, especially with only 1 week to go by here for these teams. Just briefly on these top tier teams for me, tell me if you agree or disagree. I still would be comfortable taking the Bills against the Raiders. I'm not all that concerned about them being able to beat up on some of the below average teams in the NFL. The Jets are an elite defense. They might have the best defense. We don't know, but I'd be shocked if they're not a top 5 defense at the end of the year.
And let's be honest, they were moving the ball. It was just Josh Allen had some really unfortunate turnovers. I mean, they might not have equaled touchdowns, but definitely one they were within field goal range, and he threw a horrible interception. They were driving another time. They were on the 41-yard line. He throws a horrible interception. So the Jets defense is definitely a top 3 to 5 unit, but they were still moving the ball on them. The same cannot be said about the Raiders. The Raiders might be a bottom 5 unit, when it's all said and done, especially without Chandler Jones out there. So I'm with you on that. Like I have no concern whatsoever that the Bills are going to be able to move the ball at all.
100% agree with you on that. Yeah. So the Eagles, there's some difference on our staff about what to think of the Eagles at this point, because I thought they played poorly, still covered the spread on the road in week 1 with new coordinators against Bill Belichick, one of the best, schemers and game planners of all time. Yeah. So I'm willing to give them a pass for that. And they're playing.
Well, and the whole reason, Stephen, we talked about this in our preview, right? The whole reason people were backing the Patriots was because of the defense. Like you weren't backing the Patriots because you thought the offense was going to light it up. So, I mean, the defense played pretty well, but that was supposedly what was expected, right?
Absolutely. And we'll get more in depth on the Patriots on the Megapod on Friday, but I was at least a little encouraged by the offense with an actual offensive coach running the offense in week 1. So, arrow pointing up there, and I still think the Eagles are the best roster in football. No James Bradbury probably for this game, which hurts a little bit with Jordan Addison replacing Adam Thielen as the number 2 wide receiver on the Vikings, and they still have to figure out how to cover TJ Hockenson, because if there is a weakness on the Eagles defense, it is at linebacker with Nakobe Dean also out for this game, and safety, which they just don't invest heavy money into safety. So, but at the same time, in the trenches, complete mismatch. I mean, Jalen Carter looks like a plug-and-play replacement for Hargrave, one of the best defensive tackles last year. Right off the bat, he was fantastic against the Patriots' offensive line. The interior of the Vikings' offensive line has major issues. And then you go the other side, I don't really see the Vikings' defensive front matching up with the Eagles' offensive line whatsoever. So, yes, there are some matchups for Kirk Cousins maybe to take advantage of in the passing game, but he also needs to get protection, and I'm not sure I trust them enough to get him the protection that's required.
Yeah, if we look at the top, I mean, for me, we talk about the Cowboys, right? And yes, it's going to be the Cowboys going up against a Jets team that is going to be deflated. I mean, I can't even imagine. I understand Robert Saleh's been great at getting this team pumped up and trying to keep them focused, but man, you have Super Bowl aspirations. You have a future Hall of Famer at quarterback, and now you got to go back to the same dude that was throwing interceptions and making horrible decisions for you in Zach Wilson. So I don't expect the most inspired effort out of them. The only problem for me here, Steven, is if you look at the Cowboys, they still have the Cardinals. They still have the Rams. Obviously, they have the Commanders a couple of times. The future value on the Cowboys is like through the roof, right? So to me, that immediately eliminates them off for me, because they might have the most future value of any team left in the entire survivor pool when you look at their schedule. And so for me, no way, no how am I going Cowboys, despite the fact that I think they're going to win and win easily against, I mean, listen, you saw The defensive line and the defensive scheme for the Cowboys, you have to assume, is it as good or better than what the Bills bring to the table? And the Bills were in the backfield and were like all night long against Zach Wilson. So it's going to be the same thing. The Cowboys are going to win. It's just I would rather hold them for the Cardinals game, the Rams game, either one of the Commanders games, like any of that stuff. Like I think that team, I think using them this week would be doing yourself a disservice.
Agreed. And don't you have, if you're in some of these pools like Circa, you have to consider making a pick on Thanksgiving games only, correct?
Right.
And
right.
The Cowboys play on Thanksgiving, and appears they're playing Washington, it looks like, if I have my Thursdays correct here. They have 2 consecutive Thursday games in November. So I'm pretty sure the first one is Washington at home, and then even then versus Seattle is the next one, which the downgrade on Seattle, at least at the moment. So future value there for sure on the Cowboys. So it appears, at least for us, clear top 3 here, and we could debate the order, but Bills, 49ers, and Eagles. Huge respect on the 49ers now in the market against the Rams, despite what the Rams did against Seattle. I think that the number was just wrong against Pittsburgh, and people were nervous about Purdy coming back from injury and a new right tackle, and Bosa held out the entire training camp. Yeah, they're fine. It's okay. So I think this line is more accurate than the one where they were only a small favorite at Pittsburgh last week, and the market has adjusted properly here. So, and not to mention Kyle Shanahan has traditionally given Sean McVay fits. So, I feel pretty good about this top 3 here. And to be honest, we'll talk about the other teams now, Matt. I'm not sure I can justify taking one of these other teams in the name of saving all 3 of those other teams moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you look, did the Lions look good and did the Seahawks look bad? Yes, agreed. Now, my opinion could change depending on the injury report for this Seahawks team come Thursday, because if they're without both starting tackles and Jamal Adams and Witherspoon are not able to get back in the secondary and all the stuff like that, like now the Lions at least would be a decent, I think, fringe option for people out there if they wanted to kind of go off the beaten path. I would at least be able to endorse that a whole lot better, because again, you lose both tackles. Like it's hard enough to replace one tackle effectively. You lose both tackles, it's going to be game over, right? I mean, it's going to be game. You saw Aiden Hutchinson, what he was able to do against the Chiefs line. Like, yeah, put a couple of backup tackles in there and see what happens. Like, it's going to be nightmare for Geno Smith. So I can at least back that up. But for me, this is Bills and Bills with a bullet, because I think that this is one of the better spots you're going to get for the Bills all year long. I think that you get them at home. You get them off of a tough loss, and then also, look, they play in a tough division. Their schedule is pretty tough. I'm going to hold on to the Cowboys. I'd rather hold on to the Eagles. We know that the Eagles, no matter what, are going to get a couple of games with the Commanders. That's one of the things we can always have in our back pocket with a team like the Eagles, a team like the Cowboys. Like, so for me, it's Bills, and I think I'm going to roll. By the way, just for full transparency, I had all 3 entries on Commanders in the Survivor this past week. So yeah, I was sweating bullets. I'm going to put all 3 entries. I'm going to put all 3 entries on the Bills this week and not look back.
It makes sense to me, because just one man's opinion here, I'm a little nervous about the Bills being an elite team in the NFL this year, like we've expected of them in past years, and it's for a couple of reasons. I just did a breakdown of Josh Allen's decision-making on Monday Night Football and how it's not a new development for Josh Allen. This is something that we saw from him throughout the second half of last season. I don't buy that he was playing hurt. Had plenty of strength to throw deep balls last year. So the fact that it popped up again in the first game of the season is concerning, because if you go back and look at the tape, each one of those interceptions, he had wide open options, whether it was scrambling or taking something a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage that he just didn't see and or passed up. So I need to see more better decision-making from Josh Allen to put him back in the elite tier, to put this team back in the elite tier of, an option in Survivor that I feel confident in using any given week moving forward. Yeah. I don't feel that way about the Bills right now. They do play one of the toughest schedules in the NFL based on projected opponent win totals going into the season. And just looking at the schedule, I mean, Washington's a great defense in week 3. Who knows? Maybe they bottle them up a little bit. The Giants are playing they have Brian Dable, who knows Josh Allen better than anybody. Is it crazy to think the Giants could upset the Bills? I don't think so. And then looking down the schedule here, I mean, I don't see a lot of cupcakes like I do some of these other divisions when they get to play the NFC South and, you know, some of the bottom dwellers, like the bottom of the NFC West. So I agree with you that this is my number one choice this week, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and listen, if you want to step outside the box, like I said, I think the injury report is going to line up pretty good if you wanted to do the Lions against the Seahawks. I'm not willing to back the Giants on the road, even against the Cardinals. Like, I get it. They should beat them. They have superior talent. Everybody has superior talent in the NFL to the Cardinals, but Giants coming off just a absolute beat down. Then they got to get on the road and head out to Arizona and all. I don't know, Steven. For me, I think there'll be better spots to pick on Arizona. Like, obviously it'll be a target of ours each week whenever we have this conversation, right? I mean, because every week they're going to be underdogs, and every week it's going to be a decision. Do I want to pick on the Cardinals this week? But I think for me, better spots to pick on the Cardinals than the Giants this week. So for me, I'm going to take a pass on it. If somebody said, hey, look, I think that the Cardinals are that horrific, I don't care, I wouldn't necessarily say that you're foolish for that take. I just think there's going to be much better spots to pick on the Cardinals throughout the course of the season.
I agree. I would rather take, honestly, if you want to go really contrarian in week 2, I would rather take the Broncos if Jerry Jeudy is playing against Washington after what we saw from Sam Howell and that awful Washington offensive line. Going up against this Broncos defense is going to be really tough for them. Huge step up in class for this offense after a miserable debut. On top of that, I mean, just more reliable offenses, tougher opponents, granted, but the Bengals against a banged up Baltimore team potentially. Watch that injury report for Baltimore. The Chargers against a huge pass funnel defense against Tennessee, who, you know, can't cover anybody and is relying completely on a front four to get a little bit of pressure and stop the run. Everybody throws on Tennessee because it's just so easy to do so. Already talked about the Cowboys, the Saints as well. I'd be more comfortable taking the Saints against Carolina until we see that Bryce Young and this offense has figured it out, because that was a horrendous debut against the Atlanta Falcons. So, and the Saints have many, many more weapons than what Carolina has on offense. So, yeah, I am a little bit nervous about the Giants, because when you're talking about a team who has offensive line deficiencies, sometimes that's a non-starter on arrival for an offense in a particular game. If they can't even protect, it doesn't matter what the matchups are on the outside. We saw that house of cards crumble in examples last year, most notably Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. So that's always going to be my first kind of hesitation in Survivor is taking a team that might be a favorite, but I know has a bad offensive line.
My top 3 ranked this week, and this has everything to do with future strategy as well, so don't think that I'm saying like I wouldn't, that the Cowboys aren't a great choice. I'm just talking about who I would play this week given what we know about everything. Bills would be number 1 for me. The Lions most likely would be number 2 for me, which I know seems a little bit crazy, but it is what it is. And then the 49ers would be 3rd. And the reason the 49ers are down there as well, because there's future value with them as well. Even though they're getting one of the Rams games out of the way this week, they're going to get another Rams game as down the line. That'll be a home game against the Rams as well, which we know by that time the Rams, who knows, might be sold off, for parts for all we know, and when things are down. When it comes down to it. So that would be for me. The reason the Cowboys, again, don't make the top 3 for me, I think they just have way too much future value. In a week where we have so many great options, I am not playing a team that has literally 5 other spots that I would feel comfortable playing them.
Okay, my top 3, I agree. Bills, number 1. I am saving the 49ers for probably one of their 2 games against Arizona, so I'm not using the 49ers. Yeah. Number 2 for me would be the Philadelphia Eagles. I love the matchup in the trenches, no matter which offense has the ball. I think it's a big advantage for Philadelphia, despite the key injury at corner to James Bradbury. And number 3, I'm going to go completely off the rails here and mention a team we haven't talked about yet. My number 3, if you want to go total contrarian, would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home against the Chicago Bears. Because I am now convinced, it only took me 1 week, Matt, but we had these opinions about the Bears coming into the season that they were completely overrated in the market based on all the hype.
Yeah.
I still think this is one of the 3 worst teams in football. They're not letting Justin Fields throw the ball more than 4 yards downfield. The defense was horrendously bad against Jordan Love and a bunch of inexperienced receivers. I still think Chicago's one of the 3 worst teams in the league. They might be the worst team in the league. I think they might be as bad as Arizona. Who knows? We'll see. But I also think on the flip side, the Buccaneers are, at least at the moment, around a league average team, with Baker Mayfield just having to be kind of a game manager at this point. So that would be my number 3, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think if I was going completely off the rails, if I was just in let's say, let me put it this way. If I was I only have 3 entries in Circa. If I had 10 entries in Circa, I might play 2 of them on Cincinnati this week. If you look at this injury report for the Ravens, it is already, I know every year we say this about this team, but like, they're likely to be down 2 offensive linemen. It doesn't look like Marlon Humphrey's going to be back this week either. It doesn't look like they're going to break in a new running back as well. J.K. Dobbins, by the way, was getting every one of the snaps until he gets hurt. Like, there's just it sucks for the Ravens. It happens every year.
Don't know about Mark Andrews yet either at tight end.
Yeah, and we don't know about Mark Andrews. Like it just sucks. It's every year with this team, I know, but it's like you're going to get a completely healthy Bengals team coming back home who just got completely embarrassed. And like, if I was playing one off the rails, I think that one would be good, because you're going to get you might be getting the weakest version of the Ravens you're ever going to get this week. If the offensive linemen again aren't going to be able to go for them, that could be a nightmare matchup but the Bengals, for whatever reason, wide receivers have gone nuts against this Ravens secondary. Like, I mean, just absolutely crazy over the last couple of years. And so I think we're already seeing movement now. This was at 2.5, all the way. A couple books had blown all the way through to 3.5. So it's on the other side of the key number in this one, which leads me to believe some people know that maybe those offensive linemen aren't going to be playing for the Ravens out there. So another one just to kind of keep in the back of your mind, if you're in a super gigantic pool and you want to really zig where everyone else is zagging, I think you might be getting the worst version of the Ravens maybe all season this week.
Fair.
As well. Steven, everything we do absolutely free over at The Line. So, of course, you can check out Mo's article, link in the little description below. Also, you can hit that little subscribe button, which we do appreciate each and every week. More in the commentary section. If you want to, in the comment section, let us know, what do you think? Who's the best survivor play of the week in your opinion? Again, take into consideration future value, because that's what you have to do whenever you are playing these contests. You really and truly need to have some sort of strategy and some sort of plan as you move along, and that's going to help you win some of these pools out there as well. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your survivor picks here in week 2.